Everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before us we have our agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections by fellow board members or department heads?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to add an administrator number 4 cemetery donation.
Under concerns of trustees, I'm going to put Warner Church.
I have a couple as well.
Who is that?
Parks 4, new programming. In Parks 5, thank you to Animal Care Clinic.
Actually, I'm going to put under concerns of trustees, even just the village hall thing. Starfire update. Any other additions, deletions, or corrections? Okay, the agenda will stand as amended. Welcome back, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Got a well-deserved break, hopefully.
Yeah, it was a nice time.
Good stuff. We're opening up with the monthly report. Who do we have the honor of presenting that? Lieutenant Carver?
And before you, the monthly report for July of 2020. For the month of July, we had 1,685 calls for service, just over a 15% increase. So reduced number of crashes, as well as crashes with injury, 34 crashes, 2 injury crashes, 72 alarms. We're starting to pick back up the traffic enforcement, 172 stops, 111 citations, 48 arrests, 109 vacation checks. For the detective, we had 17 cases assigned, 3 closed with arrests, 1 for breaking and entering, 1 for burglary, and 1 for prohibited acts. Next up, we have the charts comparing 2019 to 2020. A little bit higher than last year, but comparable to 2018.
So let me ask a question. It's somewhat of a rhetorical in nature because I know pretty confident I know the answer, but you know, you get folks that chirp in the public. I think I copied you on a request from Robert Lang asking just about, hey, our levy, what the resources go to, and so forth. And for the sake of the public's education, keeping them all straight, we are seeing an uptick in calls, but we can follow that right along with our increase in deputies, more proactive action, and then say some of the stuff that may have been handled traffic-wise by the OSP before, that's more on us. Is that a safe assumption and correlation?
Yes, that's a very fair assessment of what we're seeing going on. Increased activity, increased handling of things within the township. When we look across some of our annual reports, a lot of times I'll break that down by different crimes reported. And if you're looking at violent crimes, we've held relatively steady, seen some reductions in some areas. We're not experiencing any kind of crime wave that somebody might, a quick assumption to look at these increases in numbers and you want to assume there's some sort of crime wave, and it's just simply not supported by the numbers when we break it down.
Yeah, you get into the traffic stuff, I think as you had shared with me, there was increased traffic stops, but that also related to no fatals last year. Not that that's necessarily a high number ever, but I mean even 1 fatal's too many. So the fact that we are being more aggressive in nature and traffic enforcement, stats are gonna show an uptick. Plus, would it be safe to say as well, all the vacation checks? I mean, within the last 2 years, correct me if I'm wrong, but those things have went through the roof since we've really advertised more through the HOAs and so forth. Are each of those treated
So
within the
in terms
reporting?
of the monthly report, that's not necessarily part of that number, but those do play into the total numbers that show some increases.
Okay.
And in the past, the vacation checks weren't something that we kept a hard count on, that we do now, and we have, we do it through our CAD system and updated ways of tracking exactly how many we've done and when we've done them. We're finding that it's become very popular among the snowbirds, so we'll get, we'll have 100 vacation checks on a residence over the winter. It helps those numbers look a little higher as well.
All right, I just, for the sake of the public, I mean, we're seeing stuff on a regular basis from you guys, but, I always get a little eerie or leery, when the media gets their chance to try to massage data and not truly want to understand, especially when, hey, can you get me this, and then hurrying up to rush off the phone. I think it's a huge disservice to really what it is that we're accomplishing through the relationship with you guys. So I just want to make sure, for the record, we've got an accurate depiction. So,
The guys are staying busy and active out there, but it's not a crime wave. We're not seeing increases in crimes reported.
so I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot on that. When you hear it through the media, and then knowing folks are always lingering behind the potentially argue one way or another, and the service we get, again, the bang for the buck is exponentially greater than anything else if we were to try to do it on our own. So I don't want residents thinking, oh goodness, no, we're just being more assertive. No different than the fear that some folks used to have of, God, you hit the North Canton line, you better stop down or watch. We're just being more assertive because we've got the resources to handle that type of volume. Not that the volume didn't exist before, we just didn't have the resources to be able to
Yes.
respond to all of it.
Yes, things are being addressed more regularly, but we're able to do that extra traffic enforcement that the guys didn't have the time to do before. When we call, now these guys have time to do traffic enforcement and bringing those numbers up. So that total block number of, this many calls in a year is deceiving without breaking it down a lot further.
Questions? Do you guys have any questions?
Hey, Scott, I think another way to portray that would be the proactive policing that they're doing is in that calls for service category. So as them out there doing a proactive policing, it shows in that calls for service. It's not necessarily somebody picking up a phone at their house and calling for service. It's self-generated, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes absolute sense.
And last year, there were about 7,000 business checks, right? And what, about 4,000 vacation checks? I mean, that's
Yeah.
significant, and that's where that shows up. And we've about doubled our number of policing, of our officers from the last levy, so the expectation is, and should be, we're gonna see a nice increase. And we are.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Moving on from the sheriff's report, we have unfinished business. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Item number 1, I'm gonna hand to Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Unfinished business number 1 is a request for resolution to adopt the 2021 alternative tax budget for Plain Township as presented and authorize the Plain Township fiscal officer to submit 2 copies of this budget to the Stark County Auditor on or before August 20, 2020.
I will so move on unfinished business number 1.
Second.
Discussion. I mean, I know we've met with the department heads, we've had some breakout work sessions, talked through the numbers, but as well, I mean, just for stressing what we're dealing with, the public has been very supportive, whether it's our fire EMS levy, it's been the sheriff's levy, it's been road. The challenge we still face is the recurring adjustments over a number of years to LGF reductions, plus, what comes out of the general fund. So just so the general public's aware without getting into all the details, essentially, our LGF revenue since 2018 has went down 27%. That's based upon numbers. Other revenue from 2020 to 2021 is going down about 13.2%. Total revenues, and this is all under the general fund bucket. Since 2018, it went down 30.2%. From 2020 to 2021, they're expected to go down 10.4%. But yet, we do have certain elements where the costs continue to go up. So, you know, the public needs to be very much aware. You know, we continue to maximize resources, whether it's grant funding, collaboration, and so forth. But at a certain point, with what does come out of the general fund, you know, that provides parks, that provides zoning. It's allowed us to tap on with some of the county engineer projects and stuff like that. We're gonna have to continue to review and, you know, if need be, come back at some point to the public on these discussions, because with numbers like that, no offense, I don't have to be the CPA, but good thing we've got one here. That just doesn't work long-term.
Right,
So-
so it's definitely not sustainable, and it seems like the effects of COVID will be going on quite a while, so we need to be proactive.
So, I just want to point those out for the general public. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Thank you. And item number 2 belongs to Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you. Item number 2 is just unfinished business to amend resolution 20-325 for Tyler Meek to add the language seasonal hire with no benefits.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Thank you. And item number 3, I'll turn over to Mr. Iacino.
Thank you. This is just an update on the Cleveland Avenue, Breton traffic light. The county approached us last year in August to want to know if we want to partner up with them to put that traffic light there, finally warranted one. And the board signed a resolution and an agreement to do so, not to exceed $40,000. The commissioners signed the agreement last September, and tomorrow they are awarding the bid to Central LA. I do understand work is probably going to get started in September. So, much needed. There's been a lot of accidents in that intersection. Eric, you ought to be happy about that. It's very.
And part of the discussion is where does that $40,000 come from? Last August, Joe had talked about paying for
Hills and Dales.
Hills and Dales project in the general fund, the potentially $40,000 of the traffic light over the general fund finances have drastically changed. A large part due to COVID, a huge loss in bed tax has hit the general fund. Also, the decline in interest in our investments. So I wanted to bring that to the board. I'm not sure that it's something, if you want to keep those funds coming from the general fund, or if you want to consider changing where those funds come from.
I guess the question becomes, can the general fund take a $40,000 hit with all the loss that we're taking a bed tax loss alone to the general fund?
Not really, and that's why I bring it up, especially now. The difference between last year is we now have lost all of the zoning funding, and parks is totally out of the general fund. So I think we're strapped. Tom and I have talked that, you know, maybe another year or 2 is what we could squeak by, and after that, so not really.
So let me ask you, I mean, I know we come in under, it's shuffling money for consideration. We come in under budget on paving, is that, I mean, we were about 100,000 there, is that something where we could?
I can move money. I can move money around. The Hills and Dales project was going to be more expensive, but that money probably won't be due till next year, because that project was delayed. And our portion, which goes across the school parking lot, will not be due be done as long as school's in session this year. So, I mean,
Joe, can you refresh on, I mean, our share into that?
I think we're looking at close to $100,000 for our section on that project. And Dave has not gotten the numbers back because, you know, they got a grant from OPWC, but there were some plan changes, and as soon as he gives us those numbers, I'll have a better answer for you. But I think that's what we were looking around that number.
But that potential cost was also reflected in the budget, correct?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, we were anticipating that anyhow.
But that'll be a 2021 cost. So we did save money on paving, so we can go that route for this 40,000 for this traffic light.
And I'm not sure there was is there a fund number in that agreement, or just an agreement to pay it?
It was just an agreement to
Okay.
pay at least, and we had talked, and
Yeah,
I had them note that you were doing one and I
Yeah.
was doing the other, but
I
that,
wish we were
yeah, that was a
still in
year
that
ago.
financial position.
That was
but,
a year ago,
Yeah.
so before all this.
So once the bids are open and they bring the contract, we'll have to do another resolution.
No, we passed a resolution.
But we didn't have a fund number.
Okay.
So
I'll
will we have to
I'll
do another
amend-
resolution?
Would I have to amend
Okay.
it,
For the
Tom?
payment.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Because he still isn't solid on that number. if you
Oh,
read
yeah,
that
that's
email.
right.
Am I correct, that email you guys
Yeah,
received?
yep.
It wasn't real solid. We
Yeah.
just said, our email, our resolution said not to exceed 40,000.
Yeah, it may come in less.
I think, you know, in my opinion, I think we do it from road right now, for the sake of, if something changes, comes up as we get closer to the other project, I've already forgot.
Hills and Dales.
Hills and Dales. If we've got to revisit that, I think, I mean, you could say, well, hey, you're kicking the can down the road or punting it, but I mean, realistically, what we're dealing with the here and now, I mean, we can still go
Yeah,
back.
but let's say 2021, our local government funds, they've increased through the roof. I mean, I'd pass out, but,
Yeah.
I mean, then it can
Correct.
absolutely be revisited.
Because nobody expected us to be where we are right now
Correct.
based on COVID. Nobody
Yeah.
expected that. So
Yeah.
when we first did that original resolution, we were thinking, we're going to be able to pull this off.
Right,
Unfortunately, for the general fund, the road's been pulled out from underneath us.
yeah,
And that wasn't our choice. Nobody in the world could have ever expected to see this come.
yeah,
So the mere fact that we have saved considerably based on our paving, it's my opinion that this project is obviously a prioritized project. I think it's a good use of that money that we saved there to simply pay for this project. That's my opinion.
You're new, but.
Yeah,
you're
I'm
much-
catching up.
All right.
I've already done the
Making sure you
next
don't
one.
have Any questions about it? You know, right where Eric's office is, the speedway right up there, that's right where we're talking about for a number of years. It's actually been, Joe, that intersection was studied a couple of different times, and it didn't quite justify it, and it was, what, just last year that they had a new study done, and based upon the increases in the volume out of Brentwood onto Cleveland, or just traveling up and down Cleveland, we finally hit that threshold where they said, okay, it can justify it. So we had said, let's jump on this and work with the county. Because typically a traffic signal, $150,000 to $200,000.
Nowadays,
$200,000.
That was probably 200.
Yeah, it was around the $200,000
And it has
mark.
to do, it's not just, you're going, oh goodness, how can a pole and a light cost that? But I mean, locating, timing, the apparatus itself,
Sensors.
Sensors going in the ground, the
it's a
signs.
significant,
Yeah, Breton never had enough traffic to warrant the light,
Yeah.
but apparently this last study had proved that it did. Cleveland Avenue always did, but
Sure.
Breton, they have to get it on both streets, so.
And it's classic partnership, with us and the county, so.
and that helps get OPWC funds,
Absolutely.
like for the Hills and Dales. The more partners you have, the better chance of funding.
Eric must be driving more up and down Breton,
Yeah.
counting them.
I can tell you there's a lot of accidents there.
So,
Yeah.
once we get that, either
Probably
estimated
next
cost
meeting.
or whatever, we
Yeah.
could do something
We'll do a
that
resolution.
it would be not to exceed and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
That would take
talk
care
to
of it.
Dave
All right.
Torrance, and it could be a couple months before we get
Yeah.
a bill or anything like that, so.
Okay. So
Well, they've
that's,
been doing a real good job communicating that back
Yes.
and forth, so, you know, kind of keeping us updated too.
so that's the end of unfinished business.
Thank you. It's gonna, nothing on our new business. We're gonna go to the fiscal officer's report, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of pending warrants in an amount of $118,698.35.
I will
You
move.
got it, Brooks made the move.
Oh, yeah, I'll second that.
John on the second. Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I will move on fiscal officer number 2.
Second, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the financial report for July.
If you've got any questions, feel free to see Tom after the meeting.
Fiscal Officer number 5 is a request for resolution to authorize the following transfers.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
That concludes Fiscal Officer report.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. It's going to take us to the administrator, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a discussion about yard waste and the yard waste rules. A couple things to clarify, and then I'll give it to the board to discuss, but we've had some issues about trailers, and we have not longer than 10 feet, which doesn't always seem realistic because people have trailers that are longer than 10 feet. I did talk to Eric, and he said, as far as he knows, no trailers have been, is that correct?
I've not sent any
We've not
citations.
sent
for
any
code.
trailers, people have 12-foot trailers, 14-foot trailers, some residents, you know, they'll have even bigger trailers, so I wanted to bring that before the board, because that has been an issue, the 10-foot, and maybe just changing that to just no commercial trailers, I don't know how you
No
change that
commercial, no.
language.
I'll take this, because I did ask for this to be put on the agenda. We've, over the last couple months, things have went pretty smooth overall, based upon the newness of it and the parameters. But the dump trucks / dump trailers, period, I'm not, the only way I'd put a condition around that is if it's a Class B or a Class A CDL. Otherwise, if somebody's got a 1-ton or a half-ton pickup, again, no commercial dumping. So we should be, and I think we know that we can look back into the data, because we get the card swipes and we can see if Scott Haas has swiped 20 times in 1 week or once a week or whatever. I think it should be spelled out. You know, we've already got, I think, no commercial dumping. Yeah, no commercial lawn or commercial tree services may use the site, so I think that takes care of it.
Of the commercial, yeah.
But then, on the dump trucks and the dump trailer, I'm gonna tell you, when I lived over off of Tula, I used the dump trailer, and if this rule would have been put in place, I'm gonna tell you, I would have still drove right in. Reason being, I blow all my leaves to the front of the property, and I take them once. More than anything, I despise and loathe cleaning leaves, so I get it done in one foul swoop.
Okay,
So-
Scott, that rule was in place, so.
Okay.
But you're right, that's, I mean, people do that.
Can't catch me. So, anyhow, I mean, I had 2 dump trailers that, I mean, it was wedge packed full. And if somebody told me, I can guarantee go drive over there, take a look. That's why, I mean, I don't own any trailers, and if somebody goes, hey, I'll lend you mine, or I'll come over and I'll give you a hand, and I have my card that ties back to me and my address, I am not a fan of that. I mean, whether it's a 3/4 ton, I mean, even for, I've got 3 family friends that all have little older, one's an old Chevy, one ton with a small dump bed. They use it for hauling mulch once a year, but then they also use it for firewood and stuff. I can't see the prohibition on that. Secondary to that, no trailers longer than 10 foot. I know we got some of this from Jackson Township. I think we've been pushed some
But
information
I went to Jackson and peeked on it Saturday, and there were trailers longer than 10 feet. Not that I measured,
And-
but you could eyeball and.
And I've got a neighbor up on the corner of Woodell and Easton that, quite frankly, Mark's got a, I don't know if I said it was 22 or 24 foot trailer. He uses it a couple times a year, whether he's hauling firewood, back from the campground, or, helping clean stuff up. It's the only trailer he has. And to me, I think this really comes down to, again, no commercial dumping. And if somebody's trying to pull the quick, hey, I've got Scott Hawes landscaping, I'm not labeling my truck, but again, we can see that somebody's coming in 10 times in a day, 20 times a week. That's abnormal for normal residential activity here. So, I mean, honestly, I think the length, in and of itself, most folks may have an 8 to 12 footer, but I can tell you when I did have one, I had a 16, it was either 16 or 18 foot, so it's not that it's uncommon, but I just don't want us, I want to get ahead of this, because right now, spring's been relatively easy, but as we head into fall and leaf season, I don't want to see township hauling it.
No, and some of this is learn as we go.
And selfishly,
So,
I don't want to be getting calls, hey, I borrowed my brother-in-law's dump truck or trailer that's 20 feet. I swear I had leaves. I mean, we've got the ability, if we think somebody's abusing something, Google Earth, or just a quick look, to trust and verify. This is an honesty thing from my aspect. I think, Eric, you had one earlier in the week, or was Lisa, you saying?
I said Eric saw somebody dump 20 times, and he went and checked, and the guy legitimately himself was cutting up trees in his backyard. So, I mean, we have the ability to verify.
It's an exception, it's not the norm, but I just think we need to clear it up for the sake of the public ahead.
Yeah, I agree, and I think everybody in this room would agree, when we created these, this was still under the process of open to anybody.
Yeah,
So we tried to make restrictions that generically,
you're right.
we're gonna stop everybody. But we're talking Plain Township residents now. So we have methods also, just like he says, if somebody makes 9 trips in here in 2 days, he's gonna be all over that, and we're gonna be following up on that to saying, is it legit or not? We never had that mechanism before. We weren't able to follow up. So, for me, I'd rather one person come in with 1 dump load, dump it all, than make 3 pickup truck loads all in the same day. And I know people that have personal dump trucks. They don't run businesses, but they do odd jobs.
Yep.
And they have personal dump trucks. And I just wouldn't want to see a Plain Township resident falling under those circumstances to say, no, we're going to require you to make 3 trips with a pickup versus 1 dump load. It just doesn't make sense to me. But still, using the mechanism as a follow-up if we do start to see fraud. Because, I mean, let's face it, we know there's a little bit of fraud going on right now, but we can't go back and trace that because it's a one-time issue. We can almost guarantee people are
At the end of the
passing
day,
cars.
where our numbers are, anyways, what we would spend in research and following up on some of this, we're gonna spend more time and effort on some of that. I mean, unless the numbers start to present some type of imbalance, on,
Yeah, because you're gonna see in my number two that we're gonna be paying Worcester Brothers 4,800, and last year at this time was over 10,000. So the
and
usage
let's
like
just,
we
and let's just
thought.
let's temper that with, it's not that the township's jackpotting 5,200 to the
No,
good. It's, we're talking about volume,
Volume.
because Eric and Lisa, who did the analysis on all the?
Well, there was a group of us last year,
Yeah.
running the numbers, I mean, finance, Lisa, myself.
Yeah. So
Joe.
anyhow, I mean, we took some forecasting in there, and we're gonna be on par to cover our cost for it, but, I mean, that's ultimately where we're at.
The only one thing that I can add, because I agree with all of that, is the enforcement potential, you know, so if you say no commercial and they have a commercial plate, I can see that. And then obviously the deputies can tell whether it's a com or non-com plate. If you have no mechanism to determine if it's commercial, how do we monitor the site, you know?
again, I think it's gonna be like when we started, we're gonna have to look at those cases. I would
Honestly,
say.
if somebody drives in, say I've got a 1-ton old Chevy with a dump bed on it, and, you know, for some reason I had it non-commercial plates, because maybe I had plates on something else that, well, hell, instead of buying new plates, I'll just transfer these over. I'm sort of crapshoot here, but, if they've only come in once, and it's stumps and limbs and brush, again, I think it's gotta come back to, I mean, to me, typical commercial, I mean, there's clear branding. I can tell you, like my brother, his personal truck's technically, because he still uses it for work to a degree, it's technically got non-commercial plates, because if he ever goes to pull a trailer for work, he legally has to have that. So,
I think like we did at the beginning, we'll work our way through it. I mean, there's
I
no
just,
crystal
for the sake of our
ball.
residents, I don't, you know, as much as we were talking about sheriff's activity earlier, I mean, we've taken great pride about how far that thing's come along in the last year because of the team efforts out here. I mean, some have personally invested to improve that site as well. But striking that balance against, you know, resident getting shocked with a $500 ticket.
Right.
I prefer not to, I mean, if somebody's earned it, legitimately deserves it, you can argue with me until you're blue in the face. I'll enforce it because I've always backed, you know, the decision-making of our deputies and so forth here. I just think, you know, again, learning curve coming through this process.
And I think we have a resident, and I'd hate to have him wait till
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
concerns of residents, so you don't have to stay the whole meeting.
I wanted to get,
No, I need to talk about what we're talking about right
Yes,
now.
yep,
well, I want to get our stuff
Yes.
out. Typically,
Well,
wait,
reason
hold-
I'm-
give me just a minute. What we'll need before you address the board, just state your name and address for the record for the fiscal officer, and then you can speak to this subject here.
Yeah.
yep.
Jeffrey Paris, what else do I need to do?
Address.
Just address.
1176 Diamond Street Northeast. As far as the dump truck, I don't know who has the picture of my truck. I got caught dumping there a couple Sundays ago. I believe you're the one that said it was okay, that I bought the card.
Yeah, because it's not, it wasn't
I have
it's not a business.
I have a 1989 F450. Because of that size of the truck, I have to run a commercial plate on it. They won't let me run anything else because it'll hold 5 ton. I have a 160-foot limestone driveway with a big parking lot. I have 3.5 acres. I bought the card, and yet, instead of the things you have in place to see how many times I've dumped 3 times this whole year, maybe only twice. I don't dump 3 times a day, 5 times a week. So why did the sheriff get an email to aggressively pursue me for dumping up there when I'm legally allowed to dump there? Because of what you guys all just said, I fall under that whole category.
That's
But yeah,
why
there's
we're
a-
But that's-
discussing it
no,
tonight.
No,
This is
sir,
what-
to your point,
No.
prior to our discussion, that wasn't
Yeah.
the expectation. What we're having this discussion for is to mitigate
Okay.
situations
Yeah.
like.
But the
like
sheriff said he was sent an email to aggressively pursue me for dumping up there. I don't appreciate that as a township resident.
Well,
Well, there's only, in all fairness, there's only one way that we can determine whether it's legit or not legit, and that's to follow up on an investigation.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure your interpretation of us following up is
Okay.
aggressively going after you, in all fairness.
You guys have an easy way of checking how many that card reader reads, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
but
That right?
again, under the previous rules, we had to follow up on that because
Okay.
that was a violation of the previous rules that we are talking about right now, that we think we need to change.
Okay. I
Okay, in all
agree.
fairness.
I agree.
Okay? So we're trying to help your situation.
I appreciate that,
And I appreciate you coming here because now we understand about why your truck plate said that.
Yes.
Because up until that,
Yes.
we didn't know that.
No offense.
And Lauren
Because
had
even my
described it to
insurance,
me
I
as a
have to run
trailer,
commercial
not a-
insurance because it'll hold 5
Sure.
tons, just.
Understand.
But it
So-
fits in my garage, so I don't have to look at, the neighbors don't have to look at it.
Sure.
I mean, it saves me a lot of backbreaking work.
Oh,
Yeah, well, and I know other people that have dump
And
trucks.
I do understand your point of view too, there are commercial people that were dumping up there before you did that card reader.
Correct.
Now I don't know so much because I don't go up there near as much.
It is not.
So we're trying to help this situation.
Okay.
honestly, we've had some other folks that we've pursued and we ended up reviewing it, and then we waived as a one-time, like, hey, here's the deal, but
Okay.
again, first year under this,
Right.
the goal, this board, whether it's this board or any prior board, it's never been to maliciously figure out
Oh,
how
I
we
know.
can take
I know.
advantage of the resident. Is it frustrating? Yeah, I get it, but that's where
I
we're
guess,
evolving and,
I guess what upset me more than anything was, I went through the channels, I think it was you and the
Yeah, Lauren
secretary.
came
I even
to
brought
me
my
and
truck
said
up
he
here.
had and when she came in my office and she did an email too, that you guys got that it was a trailer. And I said, well, yeah, we're not measuring trailers,
Yeah.
we're not, but it wasn't
so
a trailer.
it was a.
But
so
I
that-
went through all the protocol before I bought my car, and I showed them
Sure.
the truck, I did everything. But yet, it didn't go through all the channels that,
Well-
hey, he's okay, you know? I don't know, should there be something in my
Well,
file?
at the end of the day, I tell you this, that stuff typically should be handled, it barely, this stuff never hardly comes
Mhm.
to the board. This is where my example, by the time something comes to us, it's one of three reasons. You know us, so you've reached out to one of us. 2, you likely got an answer from one of our staff you didn't like that I'm likely gonna tell you the same thing. Or 3, and this is specific to this, guess what, we're human.
Yeah.
We make a mistake, we make an error. And that's where it's this board's responsibility to be at the top of the food chain, own it, fix it, and let's move on. I don't wanna make it oversimplified, but that's our responsibility, and that's why we're discussing how can we tweak and adjust it, so you don't have to spend another valuable Tuesday night stuck with a board of trustees, you know, going, oh my goodness. So, I mean, what we're talking to do here, and I think we need to bring this around to closure for the staff's direction and clarification. One, we haven't been measuring trailers. We're not going to start doing that. So, I mean, I don't know if we block out on the side, no trailers longer than 10 foot. Then as far as, I mean, where it says dump trucks or dump trailers, I mean, to me, the only thing that, by maybe keeping that, is if you list it as a class B.
Or
I mean,
size.
Or,
Are they classified by size, Joe, dump trucks?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, how does that work?
Depends on the weight of the truck. If it's
Okay.
26,000 pounds and up, it's a certified dump truck.
Okay,
A single axle dump truck that you need commercial plates for.
and what would be your size again, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I go up to 18,000.
Okay, so that's.
1 tons,
under
not all
that.
1 tons are classified as commercial,
Yeah.
not all.
It looks like an F-350, but it's an F-450, it's got the straight axle in the
Yeah.
front.
You must have a pretty good sized bed on your truck.
9 foot.
So, and I'm guessing just by the consensus, we're probably going to allow dump trucks, but
Okay.
Joe, do you think we should put a limit on size? I mean, the last thing we would want is somebody backing in there with a tandem dump truck. I wouldn't.
Well, that's where that's why I'm saying the Class B.
Yeah.
Is there a way you could, if you issue one to somebody with a dump truck, you could monitor their card reader? Is there a way you could do that to see if he goes in there 5 times a day,
Well,
5 times?
Here's the
5
problem,
days a
we're
week?
never gonna know that. Okay, let me give you
Okay.
an example. So, all of a sudden, the wind knocked a maple tree down in my backyard, and it's a huge tree, okay? I'm gonna cut it up, but I don't have anything to haul it.
Okay.
It's my tree, my card, but I got a buddy now who's got a big truck and he's gonna bank, and I'm gonna throw all that stuff in. The question is, am I legitimate as that card holder? So, it's my card, I didn't have that expectation.
Right.
I'm not a commercial dumper, but do we want a truck of a certain size down there dumping? That's all I'm getting at.
Okay.
In all
Because for
honesty,
me, I
all these
would
years.
want, under that scenario, I would want that citizen to be able to use that facility for that.
Right, I agree.
In all honesty, the truck size and the trailer size had to deal with commercial people.
Okay?
And now we're set up better with cameras and a
Correct.
card system. But so many commercial people, if they had magnetic name plates on the sides, they could pull those and get in there. We just kind of carried what we had on the last sign, Lisa, with sizes and
Yes.
dump trucks. Our main goal, as far as I'm concerned, is don't let commercial people
Yes.
in
Yes,
this
correct,
yard.
exactly.
Well, and that's where
And
Eric
if we
busted.
make that error once in a while because Eric's seen it on the video, or somebody calls us and says, look at the video at this time, you know, that's when we're gonna have to
And honestly,
investigate.
to Eric, to Eric's, point, it was last year, we had somebody back in with a Class B CDL straight truck. Because I remember you either text me or call me going, you wouldn't believe this, but we've got some. So the sheriff's deputies, they follow up. Well, the guy that was using the truck was not the owner of the truck, and what had happened in that situation was the guy asked the owner, hey, can I use the dump truck over the weekend? Never told him what it was for. Well, needless to say, he was doing what appeared to be a for-profit job. So, in the nice conversation that was had with the truck owner, he called the guy up and said, you better get back. I'm assuming it was a colorful conversation. You better get back over there and get the stuff out of there because you got, I don't know if it's 24 hours or what. Otherwise, you're gonna be fine. I mean, that's been.
We used to allow, I mean, we used to tell them if they dumped in illegally, that if they took their debris back out, we wouldn't cite them, but we can't cite them and make them pick up their debris. That's judge, jury, executioner all operating the same. So we would, if somebody dropped something they shouldn't have dropped, we would tell them, hey, if you go pick it back up, we won't cite you, otherwise, these guys write the citation.
Eric?
All right.
So, Eric Williams, to change, or we haven't done one of these for a while.
Yeah.
So to change it, it would simply be by a resolution, making the editing, and then I can't remember, is there a time frame after that? Or does it go into effect immediately upon?
But for this, just we're changing the sign is what I would say.
Well, it's part of the home rule resolution. We can change the signs right away.
Yeah,
At the next meeting, I can have an updated home rule resolution, post it 30 days.
yeah, we can do all that.
You
But
just
this
want,
verbiage
you just
change
want
the sign.
taped off, or do you want to
All
hold the
this
sign?
verbiage though is included in the whole.
It is,
Let's-
yes.
Hey, before we get to the language, let
You
Joe.
just want that taped off or blackened out somehow, or do we have to get a whole new
I think for this
sign?
year.
Because that's a
I
big
think-
sign with a lot of
Yeah,
rules on it.
we're not gonna go to the expense of,
Yeah, no.
for one or two lines, find a way to where it can be
Okay,
blocked
yeah, we'll work it
out.
out,
'Cause
yeah.
Yeah.
But do we want to restrict the size of a dump truck?
See, I look at it as Class B,
And
and I don't know.
whatever that means, I'm okay with that, because
I
obviously
think
we
you'd
don't
have
want
to
to
go with a
tandem
26, I think you'd have to
Yeah.
go with a weight limit,
Okay.
26,000 GVR.
or less.
You can, yeah, so, I think that's,
Those are usually tandems, right, something that big?
not a single axle.
Oh, is it single?
So I think that's where you'd have to go with that.
So we'll want that in the
Because
line.
Class B and Class A is actually the driver's license,
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I
true.
mean, so.
I'll work with Joe on that language, I'll
Yeah,
have it ready for the next meeting, we can black out
That's
whatever we need to
perfect.
do, and then I'll bring the home rule back.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay,
So I'm good to go back and dump as I get
Yes.
more stuff then?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, as long as it comes from your yard.
Absolutely.
yeah.
You can come help me load the truck. I have to load it by hand. I just get the luxury of dumping it.
Get a Bobcat.
It saves me a little bit.
Sore that thing, I'm pretty sure.
I tell you, I got scoliosis.
I don't have
Thanks
that
for
good of a job. I don't have that good of a job yet for the Bobcat.
Thanks for coming in, because you actually helped with this
Yeah,
discussion.
thank you.
I just talked to the Captain Haynes before, and he wanted some information. It's like, I'll come to the meeting. It's- I mean, I need to
Thank you.
know the rules too. I mean,
No, I appreciate it.
Thank
but
you.
I'm all
appreciate
for it. I don't want to lose that site either with my commercial people dumping. I mean, that would be a very hardship for me.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, if we've heard that once, we've heard it a bunch of times,
Yeah.
so.
That's
yeah.
why I didn't mind paying $25 for the car. I'd pay $50, but I just want to be able to get my truck in there. That was my only stipulation.
25, you can't even get the yard, the refuse
Yeah.
company to do an extra pickup for that, let alone a
Yeah.
landscape or anything, so.
I'll go to Earthenwood once. It's expensive to dump there too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, thank you for coming.
Okay, so you're satisfied then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the
No, I'm
meeting
good.
if you want, but.
I'm good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, thanks so much. So item number 2 I referred to is to authorize payment to Kurtz Brothers for hauling of the yard waste in the amount of $4,805.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call,
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mr. Hawes.
yes.
Thank you. Item number 3 is a resolution to accept a donation from IMS LLC in the amount of $2,400 to be used to purchase the retaining wall rock from Booth Ready Mix Supply Company for the yard waste site.
I will make the motion.
Second.
I will second. As far as discussion, I would just like to extend appreciation to IMS for that donation to the yard waste site. There's been a lot of work, as we've already said, done down there. And that backstop's always been more of a dirtish mound, so to have a nice clear break back there, hopefully it helps Joe's guys when they're running the loaders and scooping stuff up. So extremely grateful for that donation.
I would agree. Efficiency is one thing, but actually it looks pretty nice too.
Okay, the last item I added
Hold
on.
on, I got
Yeah,
a
sorry.
roll call. Roll call,
Mr. Hawes,
yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
Mrs. Harless.
Yes.
Thank you. The last item I wanted to add on is we did receive, and this is, I believe, their 3rd donation from Julie Johnson to our cemetery, which is unusual to get donations to your cemetery, and in the amount of $1,000. So we will decide where we will put that. I know they're interested in beautification. That's what allowed us to do the fence and the memory garden. We did order a plaque for the memory garden. But her entire family is part of the history of Plain Township, and even though they live, do you remember where they live, Missouri
I think
or
in Michigan.
Michigan?
Upper Michigan, yeah.
They are very supportive of that cemetery.
So we won't hold Michigan against them.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
They're from Ohio.
And with that, that's the end of the administrator report, and if it's okay, I would like to go ahead and
Yes,
go. Thank you.
absolutely.
All right.
Takes fire department, Chief Schallenberger.
Thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report.
Anybody got any questions for Chuck? Okay, next.
Thank you. Item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize payment to Stanton Electric for the installation of LED lighting at the mechanic bays not to exceed $8,200.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, I think it's just important between conversations with Joe and Chuck. I mean, that area over there, this is gonna drastically improve the lighting within that area, just from the brightness and so forth, especially with how over in that corner.
Yeah, they won't have to wear their headlamps every time
Yeah.
they're bending over and looking at something.
So, money well worth investing. Any further discussion? Roll call,
Mr. Hawes,
yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
Item number 3, we applied for a workman's comp grant for a safety initiative and received that grant just the other day. So that announcement there is for one power load system and one power cot to be purchased to install in an ambulance. So I wanted to let you know we got that.
Nice work, chief.
And then going along with that, I have number 4 is a resolution to amend Resolution 20-152 and increase the amount to $51,000 to pay for one power load system and one power cot.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 5 is a resolution to extend an offer of employment for the position of a part-time probationary firefighter EMTB pending the successful completion of the township's medical examination, background, and drug screening to the following candidates: Tyler Booth, Kit Rottimer, Seth Shire, Gabrielle Mahaney, Joshua Short, and Zachary Shire.
I'll move on FD number 5.
Second, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Okay, item number 6 is a resolution to authorize purchase of payment for one 2020 Ford 550 4x4 and cut chassis from MedWorks DBA Crossroads Ambulance Sales and Service, not to exceed $173,000.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion. Chuck, just for the sake, I know you've had the conversation with us, but especially given we've got a young gentleman from Scouts here tonight for the general public. I mean, typically, a new medic unit's about $350,000. So what we're doing here is we're looking to take the existing cab and mount it onto a new chassis.
Well, existing box,
Or
the
the box,
patient
yeah.
compartment,
Sorry,
onto a
the
new
box,
chassis.
yeah.
So,
That's okay.
so saving the money of the box and all the manpower, putting all that together in the aluminum substructure, so.
So, I mean, and just looking at some of the, even looking at the frames that we have underneath our current ones, you got a bid from them and there's close to $40,000 difference even.
Yeah, we should save about $50,000 to $60,000 per ambulance remount. Probably a little higher than that, but for sure that much.
So again, this is just one more way of, I mean, we could have easily said, well, hey, let's just go buy the whole new thing. But again, extending the financial resources that we've been entrusted with, this is another way. To Chuck's point, you know, I think some folks are probably getting a little too aggressive in their pricing what they want, so this is a reasonable way to pursue it. You're figuring, Chuck, what, by the time we get a year's use in on something like this, that would then allow you to gauge how you want to proceed forward with some of the other medic units moving forward.
Yeah, we have 3 ambulances now that, or actually 4 that are 09s or older. And so we're hoping that if, you know, in a backup role that basically will gradually rotate them in the front lines, you know, keep moving them around, and that should extend our life, and then probably hopefully get about 4 ambulances for a price of about 2.5 is what I'm hoping, so.
No further discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And then item number 6 is a resolution for purchase and payment to N&N Maintenance for sandblasting and repainting of the frame on engine 4 to include labor and materials not to exceed $3,500.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Chuck, is this the one that was down there that happened to help unload some loads off?
Yeah, actually, this is the truck that had the tank with the hole in it. So the mechanics have pulled the tank. They're actually making a substructure to redo all of that while we got it out. And then this company's gonna sandblast the frame rails, repaint the inside of the wheel wells, some stuff by the gas tank. And that way, when we set that tank back in, it'll be, you know, I wanna say brand new, but back into top-notch shape, I guess you'd say. So that way, because we're gonna need that truck for another, at least 10 years to 12 years. You know, and we should be good to go then for that time frame.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And that concludes fire department. Thank you very much.
Mr. Iacino, Road Department.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item number 1 is July's monthly report. If you have any questions, I'd glad to answer them.
Go ahead.
Item number 2 is a resolution to authorize services and payment to N&N Maintenance for sandblasting and painting of the road department truck lift, not to exceed $7,500 to be divided between 2 separate departments, road and fire.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that concludes the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. It's going to take us to zoning. Tom?
Thank you, sir. First item on the agenda is the monthly report.
Good to go? You're good.
The item number 2 is a resolution to declare item A as a nuisance abatement.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And item number 3 is a resolution to declare item A as a nuisance abatement payment.
I'll move on to zoning 3.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that will be all for zoning, sir.
Thank you, Tom. It's going to take us to Parks Department. Mr. Steiner?
Thank you. Item number 1 is the monthly report.
Okay.
Item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to assign additional duties to Zach Marzilli, Courtney Fletcher, Christian Hendricks, Taylor Hollinsworth, Steve Dorr, Steve Lasik, and Shanna Schweikert, effective as of 8/9 of 2020 at their current rate of pay in the Parks Department to specifically clean restrooms, take temperatures, and sanitize the facility of Diamond in a manner set forth by the Stark County Health Department as related to the COVID-19 guidelines to be reimbursed by the COVID CARES grant.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 3 is simply to further discussion about our Salute to Veterans event. I sent a draft proposal with 3 different scenarios based on cost to serve that number of people. You know, as we sit here and the world continues to turn and things continue to change. You know, I was talking with Lisa about it earlier, and maybe in my email regarding RSVPs, they might be more difficult to come by or to be more accurate with. So I guess my recommendation at this point to begin the discussion would be take any one of those 3 scenarios based on the environment we're facing of the day. That's the best advice I can give, given an environment that's changed an awful lot in the last 7 days already. And I think, Ms. Harlan, I believe we were discussing it, and I thought that we could do something. What we could do, our sponsors are engaged. I actually spoke with Starbucks again today. They are in, Drug Mart is in, Mission Barbecue's quotes are solid. I know we have a financial donor as well that's in. So I'm not concerned about the cost of the event. I think at this point it's a matter of, in light of what Mr. Sabo had mentioned previously, doing something for the veterans that makes sense given the current environment of the day. And I think we're 3 months out from the day to the day. The blurb I sent, I think, for you folks to review, you corrected some of the COVID stuff on it. I think that might be the way to go right now. Let them know our intent's always to do something. The goal is there. We understand it's a world that turns and changes and stuff with this pandemic. And the situation is fluid.
Stay tuned to the website, stay tuned to our social media. We'll certainly attack it with press releases as well as we get closer to the day. I think I mentioned in my email that we have, I think till November 1st, really to kind of lock in what that looks like to promote it and to make sure we lock in with our vendor as far as the food goes. And I think that gives the board time to evaluate the environment around us as we go forward, because I would be remiss if I didn't think things were going to change again.
Do you think that would be pushing it if we wait till November 1st?
No, I think November 1st gives the vendor time to get their numbers straight with the ordering of the food and getting it in and getting it to us. As far as the event goes, I think we've done enough of them, regardless of what that scenario is. We can promote that and turn that around pretty quickly. I mean, Chief and I have worked on setup at that place more times than not to knock that out in enough time to prepare without extra vendors that we've had in the past with the services and things of that nature. I don't foresee it as being an issue for us personally. But I think it gives you folks time to evaluate the environment as is presented to us of the day. And I hate to say it that way, and I hate to be a little hesitant in my recommendation, other than that I'm watching these things change and these guidelines change, and we're watching the governor's press conferences, so I think to say that our intent is to do something, we don't know what that looks like until we get a little closer, and then stay tuned, call in. I mean, obviously I'm happy to update to the knowledge I have, and share with you folks the same, obviously, so.
I will say that the only thing that I'm not necessarily as much of a fan of is the multiple seating, essentially doing like 2 rounds.
Right.
To me, it's either, I think we do a limited capacity in person, or it ends up being the drive-through, and honestly, to the point that, say we end up, we're gonna end up going drive-through and somebody shows up thinking, oh, hey, I thought there was service, we can still process it, hey, changes in circumstance, we've got a meal, we've got, little program here.
We can provide the bags with the services on them to have the information to hand them as we hand the food too. So I think that there's still something to provide them outside of just a warm meal. There's a list or something we can provide. I mean, I've got the spreadsheet anyway. We can knock out those contact names, numbers, and services and hand those as a part of a meal to them, whether they're sitting in person or driving through. I think that's a fairly, I'm sorry.
The speaker, how long do they need for notice? Are they coming out of town?
Probably a month, up to a month.
Up to a month.
Yeah.
And you can do it virtually too. I mean, there's that option that exists where you can record and do virtually too. I think,
But they're coming in.
yeah, I mean, I guess the speaker portion of that too is relevant to what we can or can't do that time, so.
Well, I think maybe if we get squeezed, here would be the other idea, outside of the speaker, maybe it's, we take the opportunity to, maybe it's the three of us and we do, it's the storytelling of that hillside. It's come far away from the original year.
Or speaker or group families that can talk about how much it means to them this.
We could, if we could find some folks, we probably could. What I was thinking is, going on 6 years ago when I proposed that over there. I mean, from where the vision started to where it is, and I mean, honestly, the story of how it's come to, but then what we're working towards and painting that visual, knowing there's additional pieces that not only are going to be set here very soon, but as well, what are the additional pieces we're going to work towards, whether it's the Purple Heart Memorial or, say even, I pulled up that one masonry flag idea, similar to like they've got Florida as a backstop. I mean, we can talk about how folks can get involved, because how many people walk by there and it's like, oh, this is beautiful. I didn't even know this was here. Well, you already enjoy it, but then I know I've had folks go, well, what if I could, make a small donation or something to it? The fact is we're all in the bunker and we know that, oh, well, hey, if they just inquire here, they can say, no, we got to get to the point where some of the signage that you talk about you know, and repurposing some of the old farmers market signs and so forth. Purple Heart Memorial, and it's like a ticker column where, hey, we're X% towards our goal. I mean, talking about it's not enough, it's, you know, helping create that visual, because somebody goes, I like that, I wanna be part of it, how can I get involved on it? So, you know, that story can be a combination of how it's come to and where we're looking to go, but then as well, we pepper in, you know, comments, and that could be something, maybe it's, whether it's anybody we've got through SAM Center contacts, anybody that's through the SVSC or whatever, just residents we know that are veterans, that it can be a small project capturing those comments, because it's been really cool that every year, I think even last year, we've always had at least a World War II veteran present. So, I mean, if we end up going remote, that may be a little different, but then, okay, we do this, some type of recording, well, what's gonna be the conduit to get it to them? I know we've got our YouTube channel, we've got our social media, but, you know, you look at the population dynamics of Plain, and, I mean, if it wasn't for my stepmom, there's no way my dad would have a smartphone. He'd still have a flip phone, and he'd never find our Facebook or YouTube channel or anything like that. So, I mean, that's probably one of my bigger concerns, is if we do record something, you know, some folks may go, okay, hey, I get it, there's no program this year, but I'm sure there's gonna be some that, man, they've always had a good program there. I was looking forward to it. How do we facilitate that? And making sure they know where to receive it. So, yeah.
I mean, my knee-jerk reaction would be jump drive, but again, if we're talking about that segment of the
Yep.
population, a jump
Yeah,
drive
same
might not
thing.
always be,
Technology
yeah,
is the same.
we're in the same boat there then, whether it's social media or jump drive, we're in the same boat.
Might be able to approach like WHBC and see if they would actually do a remote broadcast of that 15-minute speech. You know, just present what's going on, and then maybe they would do it, I don't know. I mean,
That wouldn't be.
or one of the other ones, like there's 95 nines in the township still.
Yeah.
It's a
That Christian.
Christian, you know, I don't know if they would do that.
Broadmoor Circle.
Yeah. And then through your contacts, do you have ability to have the veterans' address, like that live in Plain Township? Or some way you can, like if we mailed them something, or, you know, or whatever, I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that's even possible, but, I don't know, if you have like a magic list of veterans?
It can be.
Yeah, or like general mailing that would go to like the Legion Halls or something that we could get that word out. So if you were trying to do a drive-by food or deliveries or something, you might be able to get a better number. That, you know, that they could respond a card or some, hey, I'll take a meal, or you could drop it off, or I'll be there, or whatever. Because I think you're gonna be hard with numbers. Is the
I think
biggest
it's hard with numbers no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, if there was a way you could even get to 50% of the people that, you know, they say no, yay, whatever, I don't know. I'm not sure that's even realistic, but, you know.
I think for the immediate action, I think we just put there were intentions to do something, and as we can figure out what that is, we blitz it hard in every way, shape, or form, and do our best to accommodate what we can accommodate, given the current guidelines at the time.
Yeah. All right, next item.
Item number 4, I'm actually excited to announce this. We've been working kind of quietly on the opportunity to bring new programming revenue streams. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the week of Halloween with the Kick or Treat Esports Soccer Tournament, which will launch registration on the 15th of September, as will our new esports leagues launch on the 15th of September. And it's great because it's virtual. In this day and age, I think there's got to be a need or an avenue for recreation or stress relief in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to start with a 2 age bracket, 13 to 17, an 18 and over tournament, just to get our feet wet with this. And then we're going to launch leagues registration on our team sideline account as of the 15th. We'll launch the leagues themselves in November. It's kind of cool. If they have a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox Live, they've already paid for their subscription to be online with those. They register, give us the information of their, I believe it's their online name or whatever, so that we can reach out to them via email, schedule their matchups. They can schedule a time to meet their opponent. They have to have the game played by a certain amount. We would set, basically on the settings, tell them, you know, this are the settings you're going to use from duration of half to the type of tournament, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then our supervisors would spend minimal time basically logging in throughout the week to update the scores and schedules and send the next set of matchups out. It allows us to reach out to possibly a new niche of user that wouldn't necessarily use the park or be interested in sports themselves, but are interested in games. It also allows us to reacquaint ourselves with our users that are just looking for something to do because they can't kick the ball around as they normally would in this time. So we're kind of excited about it. I researched it. Only Columbus and only Pittsburgh are doing something similar in the public sector, and it's a $1.3 billion industry and growing right now. So it looks like it's a trend that's going to continue to grow and something that I'd like to be in early and set the market with and let people know what kind of service we're providing them with it. And I did speak with Mr. Williams for a brief moment today, and I sent him an example of an online waiver. We're going to kind of mix and mesh that with our own waiver and make sure that we're covered under all bases, legally speaking, as we move forward. Thank you. I'm pretty excited, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not a gamer, but when I see 1.3 billion, I gotta get a little twitchy, like, why aren't we doing something like that? So adapt to the environment and see what we can come up with, and even as we would, quote, return to normal, I think this is another avenue that can continue to grow. So, with that, if there's nothing else, Parks 5 is just a simple thank you to the Animal Care Clinic on Wales Avenue. They participated in our dog park sponsorship. They sent in a $500 sponsorship.
Wow.
The office manager actually brings his dog to the park regularly and is excited to be a part of it. So we want to thank them for their support, and we'll certainly put that to use with dog pot bags and other materials. And that's all for parks, if you have nothing else.
Thank you. It's going to take us to communications, and Chuck, is it safe to turn this one back over to you, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I could read it. We just had a thank you note from one of our residents. Says thank you so much for your kindness when I was taken by a squad to Altman. The people of Plain Township are blessed to have. I'm not sure if it says you guys looking out for them. So and that was from a resident over here off of Mill Branch.
Love the great work. Okay, that brings us to the portion of the meeting, public speaks. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the Board of Trustees, you just actually state your name and your address for the record. I guess what brings you out tonight?
Merit badge, is that what you're working on?
Yeah, I have citizenship in the community.
Okay, what troop are you a part of?
I'm troop 42.
Okay.
Is that Simpson?
Little Flower.
Oh, Little Flower, okay. So, do you have any questions?
So what rank are we? Can't hardly.
I'm a tenderfoot, but
Okay.
I have my old badge on.
I got you.
They haven't had a chance to have their court of honor yet to get their new stuff, but they've been doing a lot of stuff virtually.
Okay.
Like we watched one of your meetings virtual as they started to start the merit badge process for this one. But once you guys basically opened back up, they're like, now go see them in person. So, but it's a very interesting, I got a lot of ideas for you guys as you're sitting there, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything.
Well, that's what public speaks is for, and if it's not here, you're always welcome to call any of us, whether it's.
Well, just like with the whole gaming thing, are you reaching out to the kids at the schools? Because with them being virtual, they're only going 2 days or 3 days a week. I bet you they're gonna have a lot of people that would be interested in that.
We actually load all of our program on their website digitally, and they push it out to all the
Okay.
parents.
Because I'm like, he's turning 13, but I know he's not a soccer fan, but
We're gonna have basketball, hockey, football, and soccer come November, so keep your eyes open.
So have you found it informative, or have you been bored out of your mind? Like, oh my gosh, how can they do this every 2 weeks?
You're gonna get your badge either way, so answer. We can tell you what we do.
I'm not being,
Yeah.
do you want me to,
terminology.
Mr. Steinberg, do you want me to continue to ask questions here? I've got all the time in the world this evening.
Well, sure.
I found it kind of really interesting to learn about what's happening around me and stuff.
You wouldn't know how much the ambulance cost, that was his big thing.
Honestly, I mean,
It's expensive, huh?
we're not blowing smoke. I mean, it's over 300, it's over 300,000. They used to be, I think I started in 2010. They were 250, 275-ish, and I mean, it just continues to go higher and higher. And to Chuck's credit and point, it gets ridiculous. And I mean, when there's alternative ways of, we maintain our equipment real well, but some of the chassis stuff, it's eventually gonna wear out, so how can we replace that and save the rest and, you know, do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers while still giving the staff the right tools and resources to do it. So, well, if you need anything signed afterwards, just that you were here, whatever, one of us will be more than happy to sign that for you, but glad to have you in attendance. One word of advice, see your way through to Eagle Scout. Take it from somebody who, I got hit with the fumes, that's the perfume and the gas fumes, and I never finished. So I've got my 4-year pipestone at home, and I believe it's Star, what is it? It's Eagle, it's not Star right now. Life, yeah. I made Star, and then perfumes. It was Troop 36 over in East Canton, the building we used to meet in. No longer exists, actually where the old community library sits. It used to be there. So seriously, stay focused, because you're gonna learn so many more valuable lessons in life
I guess
that will carry out through
nephews
your
that have
entire
followed
life.
through with Eagle, so I have a feeling that there's a lot of family, not really pushing as much as just kind of guiding him.
Support?
Yes, exactly.
Good.
And Mr. Steinberg will be more than happy to help you out with an Eagle Scout
Oh,
project when you get to that. Because that's what's made it.
Oh, he's got some ideas
Lot
for
of
his Eagle Scout project already. You're on his list.
Good stuff.
Because we've actually had about 3 different things in our park that were all built with Eagle Scout projects.
Well, some of the picnic areas, the
Yeah.
sitting areas.
The bridge, our
bridge,
flag depository.
the paved, part of the pathway being paved, the flag repository.
Lit up lending library.
Yeah.
So we've had some really nice projects, and they're still in existence. So anything we can help you with, don't hesitate. Good luck.
Thanks.
If there's nothing else, our public speaks, that'll take us to concerns of trustees. I've got 3 things that I promise I'll expedite these. We all received a message earlier today. A resident did come in, concerned about Werner Church, specifically the Wicker Creek allotment, and it's a combination of it. Comes down to two topics. Drainage, because the individual that's on the south side of Werner Church, they've lived there for 65 years, and they know anytime there's a lot of rain, it tends to puddle on the other side pretty heavily, but then given the soils and so forth, it leaches its way over towards their house and creates water issues within their well pit, which is within their basement, i.e. partial living space. So they're concerned about that. Second piece is really with where they're looking to cut the road out, because we know right now in the Wicker Creek there's one way in, one way out. So traditionally, regional planning always makes sure, as do the safety forces, that there's more than one point of ingress and egress. Well, right now, how they've got it marked out over there, concern is that they think all the traffic's gonna come out, and it would come out on Warner Church to where everybody's headlights are gonna be right shooting in to the house. That being said, Warner Church County Road. This is technically private, it's private property, so in the township, we can't do anything immediate about it, but what Joe and I have talked through, we're putting them in contact with Joe Underwood Regional Planning, because until that development's done and it's turned over to us after we've inspected, there's nothing that we can do, but I had committed to the residents that I'd make it a part of the public record because it was their concern and while I was there. They've already had requested to, if we take a look at putting some type of intersection sign ahead for that Knoll Ridge crossing, just because as you, say if you cut down Middle Branch, head east on Warner Church, go over that new bridge and you start to come through those curves, it's not that it's super straight through there and, you know, they've got some concerns. So Joe and I talked about that. He's gonna take a look, he'll make a recommendation back, but I just want to bring you guys up to speed on that. One of the things that we do need to keep in the back of our mind is if we need to look at some type of future speed study, or if with the density of housing over there, even though it's in the allotment, not directly on, in fact, you're gonna have increased traffic there. I mean, folks are going through there at 55.
Yep.
55, so I told him it wouldn't be immediate because until you hit certain thresholds. So they were understanding, but they were clearly frustrated, and rightfully so. And when the gentleman, you know, is pleading that, hey, I'd just like to live my final years, you know, without having to deal with headlights right in the front of my house. I'll work with Joe Underwood. Joe is necessary just to hopefully get this to a more desirable situation.
Mr. Haas, real quick,
Yeah.
the speed limit is 55 mile an hour through that section. I will contact the county to see about it. But Lieutenant Carver has already been contacted, and he has been sitting out there checking speed, so.
Are you catching a lot of speeders out there, or do you notice a lot of speeders?
No, we're getting them in that, 45 to 55 range. We're not really getting anything over 55 out there.
Which, I mean, to that point, I think this ties back to no different than we see in a lot of the allotments, what you perceive as the speed. Until we give you the report, and you're like, well, there's no way there's gonna be, well, I'm telling you, here's the data, we're not in manipulating it or anything, but.
Yeah, I think the resident that I've been talking to out there is probably not the same one you have, because they're on the same side of the street as Wicker Creek. They're
Okay.
a different resident that I've spoken with several times over the years about the issues out there.
3394.
38 or 11, I think.
Next thing I had just was the Village Hall thing. I know there was a Canton Rump article, but I know not everybody either buys it or does an online subscription. So this is directed towards our residents that live over in that Avondale area. Essentially this week they were to start demos. They were targeting 2 to 3 houses per day. There's 84 houses, approximately 2 to 3 months to complete. They're gonna do the work during the week, during daylight hours. When I asked the question of who's gonna get notice in there, they had referenced, there's some properties on Barb Lake, Clarendon 19th and 21st that are being notified. I was no different than we do with our zoning hearings where you gotta do it within a certain distance. Tried to see if they would go that, because I think the concern is there's probably still just a few houses in there. Well, let's say it's Tom who's got a house and then everything else rounds up. Well, Tom's getting notice, well, you probably already know it's coming. Concerns are, as we've gotten already with prior development or construction or noise. With the demos, I don't see that necessarily happening. But Kevin Shiplett had raised during the call of, are there still any intended training uses in those homes? And at this point, it would be on a case-by-case basis, which triggered, me to ask the question, in a training situation, does any of that mean controlled burns and so forth? given the amount of houses they've got over there, they had said at this point, that is not planned or anything, because we would clearly get calls, hey, what's going on over there? There's some fire going on. Some folks are gonna get out, they're gonna go take a look at it. Others, even though they're gonna call 911, we're still gonna get some of those calls. So should anything change, we were promised that there would be an advanced communication to us on that. And, you know, this is being funded, again, combination of the village, but then the Stark County Land Banks put in about $400,000 of this thing under the premises that economic development blight, even though I sort of challenged that one because it was self-created blight. And then safety issues such as squatters and trespassing. So that's the only thing I had on that. And then just as a quick little update on Starfire, I was chatting with Alex Lombard. I know it's probably been a couple of weeks since we got those photos over off of Columbus that the old one's been leveled, so it looks just like a dirt lot right now. But there's some additional EP ground out for testing to see if there's gonna need to be additional brownfield abatement type work. So this is one of those things we've discussed keeping our eye on for a number of reasons before, but it hasn't advanced beyond that demo and getting into the soil results.
Those tanks were removed, weren't they, Chuck?
Yes, it was confused on the jurisdiction, but we were there for the removal.
They were crushed the whole 9 yards, so. That's all I had. Do either of you have anything under concerns of trustees? Concerns of the fiscal officer?
No concerns.
Okay, takes us to the approval of minutes for July 28th, 2020, and I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:26 PM.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.